Okay.
Okay, this is the April 4, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Rilling, Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Frayer,
Here.
Mr. Gilleret,
Here.
Mr. Cassines,
Here.
5, we have a quorum.
Okay. Right, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, and there are quite a number of them for March 3rd, March 7th, 2 meetings, a special and a budget review, March 8th, 14th, 15th, and the 29th public hearing. Would anyone like to move all those items collectively so we can discuss them collectively?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved by Ed. All right, has everyone had a chance to review all those sets of minutes?
Yes.
And if so, are there any corrections, additions, deletions, etc.?
Now, I'd like to start off with page number 9. This is the meeting of March 7th. Next to last paragraph should read, Mr. Freya told Mr. De Palma that Oak Hills, that he believed non-revenue rounds should be considered the same as revenue rounds, and the city should be compensated.
Okay, so everything after that, De Palma, that.
Yeah. Let me
so
read
that
it one
Oak
more
Hills could
time.
not keep. Yeah, go on.
Okay. Mr. Freya told Mr. De Palma that Oak Hill's non-revenue rounds should be considered the same as revenue rounds, and the city should be compensated.
Okay. Fair enough. Are there any other changes?
Yeah, Ed, to the meeting minutes on the March 29th meeting, beginning on slide 24 or page 24.
Yep.
There were 2 email comments that we received about funding for the public hearing. One from Catherine Gallup, one from Julie Fleming, that do need to be included in the minutes. They were inadvertently omitted from the minutes of that meeting.
That's right. Yeah. Can that be done? Do we need to provide whomever the scribe copies of those emails so that a synopsis can be sort of reproduced in the minutes? Do we have a scribe on today? We should, right? Well, at some point, the mechanism for getting that done needs to occur. So if we need to send the emails to the scribe, then hopefully the scribe will reach out to us to identify who they are, and we will send those minutes, those emails to you. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I had another one on page 19 of the March 15th meeting. And this is in the 4th paragraph down. It said, Mr. Daniels explained a request for $135,000 to fund I believe that should have read diversity officer.
I think that's right. Yeah.
What it
could be
says
that
now,
DEAI. It could be that DEAI is some sort of an acronym, but I think that's what was intended, a diversity officer.
Yeah, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
So
that yeah.
If you want to spell it out for clarity, that's fine.
Yeah, so it should be diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
so we just spell it out the first time we use it. So, okay.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries and the minutes are approved. There's nothing on the special appropriations agenda, nothing today on the transfer agenda. We do have other business, beginning with adoption of the tentative operating budget for 2022-23, and that begins on page 28. Mr. Dakowitz, would you like to speak on that?
Sure.
Or Tom Ellis, whoever's available to do that.
Tom did most of the work. He can comment and take the glory.
Yeah, so it's just the two summary pages that you're all familiar with by now after living and breathing them. All of the regular the budget reviews. So key to note that the far right-hand column that's on the summary page, this one here. I don't know if you can see it, the blurred background, but we're coming in at $414,175,402, which is about 24,000 less than the cap. And the reason for that was when we went back and asked for the department's 0.5% cuts, the fire department was only on point for a $109,000 reduction, and they came back with a $133,000 reduction. So that's the only difference between the cap from the Common Council and what the BET ultimately decided.
Okay. And that represents a mill rate increase over fiscal year 2022 of 3.28%. Is that it?
Next, that would be on the next page. That's where all the mill
On the
rates.
bottom,
Oh, it's on the bottom of
the
page
bottom of
28.
this page is the average for the city. If you could show the right-hand columns, this is the average for the city, which is the 3.28%. And then on the next page, we show by taxing district, and it ranges from 2.41% for the first, second, and third districts up to 4.03% for the fifth district.
Henry, it's Troy. How come there's such a disparity between the increases per district?
It's because of the average value of the house per district and the amount of the grand list that's in each district. So the mill rate, if you have, let's look at, well, there's also the allocation of services.
Right.
Okay, so you have the mill rates are affected by how much each of those services cost, and it's allocated over different groups of districts. When we get to the average tax bill, it goes by the average home. And that's why, but the rates for the mill rate by district are the same exact increases for the average home price.
And there's some districts that don't have sewer and that kind of thing, and they
I could go through it in detail. The fire services are not offered to the 6th district. They have their own fire department. So that's why there are certain mills for the 1st through 5th. Garbage is only offered for the 1st through 4th. Lighting is only offered for the 4th and 5th. And then the 6th district offers services to their residents, and they ask us to add the 1.254 mils to their residents. And that's how we get the total by district.
right.
And also, before we, I guess we vote to approve it, what's your opinion, Henry, on I know this is still a tentative approval. We're sending it to the Common Council. There seems to be a few other items, namely one large item for the Board of Ed we have to decide. Do you think we'll hold our AAA rating, or what's your opinion?
I think the AAA rating is more dependent on our long-term borrowing. when I look at these expenses, and a tax increase in the range of 2.4 to 4%, I don't think that's unreasonable. My big fear is that we have very large capital projects that we have to finance. We have the 220 million that was passed in prior years, authorized in prior years, but not yet borrowed. We have every year, we're coming in at 35 to 40 million new capital projects. And then we have the long-term plan for the schools, where every other year they're looking at the approval of a new school for the first 10 or 15 years. So we have very, very large capital project costs we have to finance. The first level of metric that we review is the total absolute amount of debt. We're at 280 million. The financial advisor, Bill Lindsay, and I calculated a year ago that 400 million is the border for us between AAA and AA. And I am confirming numbers currently with the departments. We've already received their cash flow forecasts for the old 220 million approved. I need to know out of the 39 million that we've proposed for this year, how much would be for the coming year and how much would be further out. But I am expecting to have to borrow between 75 and 100 million dollars this year. So number one, we would be almost at the maximum of our debt capacity. And then secondly, as was circulated with my transmittal letter for capital budget this year, our debt service costs as a percentage of total operating expenses will probably exceed 10%. And it's rare for AAA bond rating cities to maintain a AAA with that kind of percentage. So we're getting dangerously close. I don't think the problem is this operating budget. I think it's the capital side and the debt service component, which is the link between the capital budget and this operating budget.
It just dawned on me that we have not moved the item adoption of the tentative fiscal year 2022-23 operating budget. Would someone like to move that retroactively?
So moved, Ms. Troy. So moved.
All right, Troy's moved it. We've had discussion on it. Are there any other questions concerning it?
Just a clarification again on the allocation, the core allocation, when we're on page 29, and we show the mill rate, and it's the same for each one of the districts.
I can explain how we get that.
Yes.
Was that your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Ed, if you're controlling the screen, could you go up to the prior page, please?
Actually, I'm not, but okay. There you go.
The magic is done. And can we shift a little to the right so we can see the column to the right? Is that possible? Perfect. We have to go up another screen. There's a little bit more. Thank you. Right. Yeah, a little right there. So we're looking at $414 million of expenditures. Okay. What we do is we isolate and extract the services that are not provided to all the districts equally. So we do a calculation to say, what does it cost for garbage pickup? And we take it out of the 414. Then we say, how much does it cost to run a fire department? And we back that out of the 414. And the last is the lighting. And we do this in consultation with our department heads, the fire chief, public works, who's in charge of garbage collection, and whoever is paying the lighting bills. And I don't have the numbers shown, but what happens is when you take those numbers out of the 414, and then we divide it by the total city grand list, that's how we get the core. If you can flip down the two more spreadsheets, please. And one more. There you go. So the 21.6809 is those costs that are applied to everyone divided by the total grand list by district. Well, not by district, by the total, and everybody gets the
Good,
same.
good, good.
It's like vanilla. The fire then gets allocated to the amount of the grand list in those 5 districts.
Right,
Similarly, the garbage and the lighting. 6th district gets the extra 30.467 for those who aren't familiar, the 10th district, that's the mill rate for motor vehicles.
right.
And that's how we get the total mill rate per district. And to get the, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but you just said that you calculate that based on the breaking out that 414 to various component pieces, and everybody that gets the same is going to get their portion of that. But the mill rate is actually calculated on the 367, which is a net number. If you go back up to the top,
In a net tax levy?
yeah, if you go back
Yes,
up
okay,
the
you're
top,
right.
our mill rate, the 24.688 is based on 367, not 414.
Could you please go back up 2 screens? No, stop. Go down a little, Right
Right.
here, a little bit more.
More?
Yes,
A
please.
little bit more. Down a little bit more.
Let's show the whole.
There you go, that's it right there.
Right there.
A couple more, yeah, that's
So
it.
what
Yeah, that's
happens is the 414 is where we start with expenditures. And then we have the adjustments. We have items that we have to pay for. The elderly tax relief, tax adjustments, and the reserve for uncollected. That's how the 414 goes up to 422.9.
Right,
Then we take off the revenues
right,
and we get to net tax levy highlighted in green 367. You're right.
right.
I misspoke. The 414 already went down to 367. Then we go up and determine how much is for each of those isolated areas, back them out of the 367, and then divide through by the green list.
So what you said before the 414, you really meant the 367.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That really makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
Okay. I could go lower if that'll make you more comfortable.
Yeah, I wish it was lower.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else?
And then just on the 6th taxing district again, that's a pure vanilla calculation of dropping out the fire, the garbage, the lighting, and adding back the expenses for the district.
Could we go up a little, please? Yep, a little lower. Down to the next, yep, 29, page 29. Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, no, I wanted to see it by district, please. I'm sorry. I should have shared my screen. So
29.
what happens, no, we have to go down to page 29.
Yeah,
There you go. So what happens in the 6th district is they get the core, they get nothing for fire, garbage, and lighting,
right.
but their 6th district business office says our costs of providing all the services to that district is 1.254 mils.
Right. Basically, all you do is just try to adjust it so that the city collects the taxes for that particular district.
Right, we're collecting on behalf of the 6th district, and
Correct.
they provide, and it's to compensate them for the services they provide their residents.
Right.
All right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so all in favor of approving the, or adopting the tentative 2022-2023 operating budget as presented, signify by saying aye.
Well,
Aye.
hold on, one more
Opposed?
question though. Are we then approving the the Board of Ed portion of this as well? And what if we do have questions upon that 1.8? Don't we have to talk about that?
Well, that's why it's tentative. It's still a work in progress, and because of that, in particular, I think.
Okay, so we're only approving this as a tentative.
Yeah, we don't have to, I don't think we have to do a final thing until May, I believe,
So why are we even approving it then?
because this has to be presented to the Common Council at some point.
Yeah, the Common Council, I'm looking at dates here. It says sets the final cap 4/12, no later than 4/19, and then we comes back to us. The BET sets the final budget and tax levy on 5/2. So this is tentative, you're right.
I'm sorry, and excuse me, but my thought was, this was the final for the BET. You go back to the council with your recommendation, and then there's nothing for them to do if your recommendation does not exceed the cap. If it exceeds the cap, they have to decide to go along or not. But since it doesn't exceed the cap, I thought this is the recommendation, the council rubber stamps it, and then it comes back to you to issue the final. I mean, when does this end?
Well, it ends on May 2nd. But yeah, but you're right, the Common Council has nothing to act on if we don't ask for them to increase the cap. And so it is a pro forma sort of a presenting of the budget to the Common Council, but nothing is final until May 2nd.
Okay, thanks.
And we don't have any indication where we are with that 1.8 million at this stage.
I think I'm assuming the mayor has more information, but he's not with us right now. But I assume that the mayor is, having discussions about that. I assume, I don't know.
Okay,
All
so we're not locking ourselves into a final number here.
Well, to the extent that, it's not final until May 2nd, we don't have to present a final number, budget until May 2nd, then I guess by definition, that's right.
So essentially, we're just going back to the Common Council saying, we don't expect the cap to go up.
Correct.
We're not asking for you to increase the cap. Yeah.
So wouldn't that mean that if the mayor was going to do something to fund the 1.8 million, he would have to take it out of some other line items?
I don't know how he intends to do it, or if he still intends to do it, but it's certainly, I mean, the numbers are the numbers right now.
That's the assertion, because once we tentatively approve this, the cap becomes the cap, and he's got to work within it. Unless there's some other magical funds that we don't know about.
Yeah, because I don't think we can't present this to the Common Council again. So I think this is it. And the operative assumption, and it's my assumption, is that is going to be, if that is going to be funded, there's going to have to be some other very creative way of doing it. So as a practical matter, we've already voted, by the way, but to approve this. But
well, we approved it, but we never seem to get into the numbers to any great extent on the Board of Ed. I mean, we have a conversation with the Board of Ed when we get the numbers, and we asked a couple of questions about the incubator school and how that was going to be funded, but we still kind of always leave it hanging out there, I think, and that's why I'm just confused about the whole thing.
Well, yeah, it's tentative. We're not asking for the Common Council to act on this, other than it's a pro forma thing, and it's going to come back to us. And over the course of the next 3 weeks, I guess, we'll have to figure out what we're doing with the incubator school, it seems to me.
So the 1.8 is not in these numbers. Is what we're saying? Is that what we're saying?
We don't
Correct.
know.
It's not in these numbers.
We don't know.
It was an
Because
open.
a recommendation has not yet been presented, so we don't know.
You know,
Well,
in the
It was
past,
an open item.
in the
we
past.
do
when I
know,
was
it's not, the 1.8 is not in these numbers.
No,
We do know that.
Fair, if you
Ed.
put it that way.
in the past, when I was on the Board of Ed and we needed special funding, you know, we did it outside the operating budget because it had to, if we left it in the operating budget, it became part of the minimum budget for the next year.
Yeah.
So it could be why we're waiting. I don't know. But it's
Yeah.
probably the best way to handle it.
The only other available monies for the 1.8, I believe, is what's left in contingency and the fund balance. Because I don't think there's any other money, unless
Yeah.
there's some money that we don't foresee or that we don't know about that we're receiving from some other funding source. Which
Brings up another question, Ed. We were trying to see if we were going to get some of the savings from the, I guess, what was it, the efficiency study, but I guess that's not happening on this budget at this moment.
no, I think that's unrealistic. Yeah.
I don't think we
We
could
have to
rule
go
out
back.
grants too. It could
Yeah,
be a
right. There are
grant.
grants. There are all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff available for the possible
Mhm.
1.8. So, but this is the numbers that we have here are the numbers that we've discussed and that we've picked apart and put back together again. And that 1.8 is definitely not in this.
Correct.
So as at this moment, the Common Council doesn't have any work to do with regard to extending the budget because we kept it within what they told us.
Yes.
Right. That's right. Yeah. We're not asking them to do anything to increase the cap or anything. All right. So do you want to do a revote or do you want to be, or are we satisfied with the vote we took? I mean, if you want to abstain, Jim, or vote no, you're welcome to change your vote.
No, I was just trying to get an explanation of what it was. I wasn't voting against it or for it one way or the other. I was just confused as what we were voting for, which sounded like I wasn't the only guy confused.
Mhm.
I'm with you, Jim, on that, by the way, so.
Confused.
All right.
So
Okay, so
basically, we're voting not to raise the cap is what we're saying.
We're voting on the budget that was presented. The
Not to raise
4.1,
the cap.
the 414,175, 402, which basically results in a tax levy of 367,511,581. That's what we're voting on. Well, that's what we voted on. So, all right. So the tentative budget for 2022-2023 has been adopted. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the fiscal year 2022-23 parking authority budget. Is there anyone here from the parking authority at this meeting?
So moved, Ed. We'll move
Okay.
each one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Troy, for moving that item. Is there someone from the parking authority that would like to go over their proposed budget?
Yes, so Garrett Bolella from Transportation Mobility Parking, the Assistant Director. And I'm also joined by James Emery, who is going to give you an overview of the 22-23 fiscal year proposed budget. And we'll both be available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon.
I'm not sure if you want to, I can share the budget with you guys. We can take a look at the summary screen from
Yeah,
there.
that would be helpful.
If you would, that'd be great. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, you guys should be able to see my screen now. Is that correct?
Yep.
It's a little small, but we can see it. But I have it in front of me anyway, so that's fine.
Okay, perfect. So my name is James Emery. I'm the Assistant Director of Parking for the City of Norwalk. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. This is our approved budget from the Parking Authority for fiscal year 2023. Just to go over a few of the highlighted points, one thing that we're starting to see that is a big boon for us a little bit is the on-street meter revenue is it has bounced back a little faster than we had expected. And we are forecasting to end fairly well this fiscal year, and next fiscal year we expect to kind of run the same course that we're starting to see now. We did put in there for a little bit of contingency, just in case there's another little bit of a variant of that pops up, because, you know, parking is like most things heavily dependent on people, you know, leaving their houses, commuting. So we wanted to be a little conservative on that number, just in case. Knock on wood, hopefully we don't have to deal with that anymore, but that will be good. One thing I did want to mention is you'll notice the third column in calls out the forecast for fiscal year 2020.
Yeah.
That is a typo and should be 2022. So I apologize for that, and I will email out an updated PDF of this when
Great.
we're done, so you guys have it. So I do apologize for that. You know, the meters, we're seeing a much more positive trend on the on-street meters right now than we are the permitting and lot transient part. You know, people are back and they're coming to downtown Norwalk, which is wonderful. That's what all of our data and our statistics are seeing. You know, we are absolutely trending in the right direction and are kind of ahead of where we thought we would be by a little bit, which is awesome. The one thing we are not seeing is some of those monthly parkers coming back. We are going up month to month, and we are trickling a little higher every month when it comes to the number of active permits. But the amount of people using the train station for commuter purposes is still down. So that's going to be kind of one of the focus points for us and how we can help the consumer feel comfortable in using that mode of transportation again. And then on the expense side of things, we're doing really well. You know, we plan to come out of
Jim, can I, before you move to that next thing, this is Troy, quick question.
Sure, of course.
Violations jumps out off the page up there. It's up 23%. I guess you forecasted almost double. Your forecast is double what your budget was last year, right?
Yeah.
What's going on there? And I see now you're cutting it back for your budget almost. That's a big number to cut back also. So what's going on there?
So we've seen through, and that was a red flag for me as well, right? Because obviously that's an outlier. So we did some research and reached out to some other communities to try and discuss exactly what's going on. And while there's a lot more research we need to do to go into that, we are seeing that number have an issue with compliance coming out of COVID. You know, we pulled back a lot of the enforcement. We went no enforcement for a while during COVID, and then for whatever reason, as we are coming back out of that, we're seeing just poor compliance kind of across the country. So it's certainly not somewhere that's unique to Norwalk. So that it's something that requires certainly some more looking into. I don't expect it to be nearly as high as we're forecasting out for the end of this year. I think this is kind of a spike and things tend to plateau when it comes to usage and compliance. So that's kind of where we get that number from.
Okay.
Go on. Yeah, so you can continue.
All right. On the expense side of things, you know, we did during the hard COVID times, we put a lot of some upgrade or some maintenance and things like that on the back burner, just trying to tighten up as best we could. And we also, the LAS, our parking management company, was able to, we were able to work with them to kind of reduce some staffing to reduce those expenses. And we plan on carrying both of those processes into next fiscal year to try and keep that expense number as tight as we can until we are fully comfortable that we are out of this pandemic and we can hopefully start to see get closer to those pre-pandemic numbers. Is there any questions on that specific section?
Nope.
Debt service going up 10%. Why would the debt service? Is that just the higher interest rates you're paying? And also, what is your debt service?
So Henry might be able to speak on that a little more. That number is a pass-through number that we get handed to us from the city. And then we just put in our budget. So I'm not quite sure on that one.
The parking authority borrows on their own credit, but the city borrows for them. So when we issue bonds in the summer, if the WPCA and the parking authority require funds, we include it in our offering to reduce our expenses, but they are responsible for the debt service. So historically, I don't believe you're borrowing 30-year money. You're probably borrowing 15-year money. We did borrow, I think it was $1.5 million last summer at a very good rate. And so when we calculate our debt service schedules by bond issue, we isolate that for the parking authority. The concept with both the WPCA and the parking authority is they are enterprise funds. They look like businesses, and therefore they budget to have no profit or loss. So the debt service is just part of their expense makeup for which they should charge sufficiently based on demand to come to a break even. I was concerned during COVID about the decline in revenues, but it looks like they've managed well and they've scaled down their expenses. But that debt service line is basically for all of their debt service that's outstanding, and we're paying it back probably over a 15-year period.
Okay.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Henry. I appreciate that.
Don't ask me about the parking meters, okay? That's yours.
That's fair. All right. So yeah, so that's where we get that 10.91% from.
So you expect your total expenses to be 5 million, basically $6 million. Your revenues are 6 point, let's say 2.5. So you have a fund balance now as a result, or a surplus of $250,000, let's say. Is that added to an existing fund balance, or was your fund balance effectively at zero and this is all you have in your fund balance now?
I believe we were effectively at zero. I would have to double check on that. I started in August, so I'm still playing a little catch up. So I certainly apologize. But that is my understanding.
It seems that in 2021 you had to go into your fund balance to the tune of $1.15 million to make up the shortfall. So you probably have some more money than the 250 or the 247,626. That's probably adding to your existing fund balance, I assume.
Excuse me.
But at a minimum, you have 247,626 in your fund balance at this point.
Yeah.
But do you have a fund balance? I mean, is that an account that you maintain that's going to go up and go down?
It looks like
it
looks like in 2021 they used 1,151,578.
Yeah. So where did that come from?
Garrett, do you have any idea on the historical nature of that one?
No, I don't. Henry, would you be able to clarify the fund balance account?
Well, I think that there is a balance sheet that is associated with this entity, but it's not provided in this budget document. So I just don't have it in front of me. So yes, they depleted their fund balance by 1.2 million in 21 to get to a balanced budget. I mean, it's sort of a loss, a deficit. And in 22, there's a forecast of a small increase. But without looking at the balance sheet, I don't know what those absolute numbers are.
I guess what I was concerned about, Henry, is that this is not coming out of the city's fund balance. In other words, we don't have to take care of that or pay that 1.1 or 1.2 million.
They are, let me get the governance correct. They are a separate fund. Let's go back to borrowing.
Yeah,
They're budgeted for a balanced budget. The way the rating agencies look at them is if they do not have to call upon funds from the city for 3 years, then they base their credit rating on their own numbers as a separate entity. And they have not called upon us for over 3 years. They have a fund balance. So yes, they're budgeting to have a balanced budget, but obviously you prefer to have a cushion, and they
Yeah.
must have developed a fund balance over the years. And during COVID, when volume and demand went down, they called upon it to the tune of 1.2 million. As I said, we get a separate audit of the parking authority. They may even have their own separate auditors, and we get those statements. I just don't have them available with me right now.
so they must have a balance sheet that's showing us maybe $2 million or something.
Well, it might have been
Or at least $1 million,
151, right? And now the forecast is that this year they would add to it, and next year they would add to it again, and that goes back to the balanced budgeting. I don't know how much of a surplus there is, but obviously they have cash, receivables, payables. But no, they haven't called upon the city's balance sheet and reserves to fund their deficits.
Yeah, and I think, as I recall in the past, a couple of years ago, some of that fund balance was used for some initiative, some transportation initiative, and I think may have been the circulator bus or car or something associated with the mall. I'm not sure if that ever went through, but that was, some of their surplus was used for the purpose. So they do have a surplus. I'm not sure how big it is, but I'm surprised that it was as big as $1.2 million in 2021. But all to the good, because obviously they needed that cushion, and they didn't have to come to the city to ask for it. So
Yeah, it would really be interesting to find out what that that cash balance or that fund balance is, because I would suspect that, it might be a nice idea to reduce some of the debt service that you have as well. If you've got a lot of cash that's sitting there, and you can afford to, service that $1.1 million deficit, maybe have some more money in that fund balance to take care of, reduce some of that debt service, and then build that fund balance up again. Anyway, it's just thoughts, but we don't know anything unless we know what the fund balance is.
yeah, maybe it's
And James, you're absolutely right. That's certainly something that we want to monitor and look into. Why we don't want to we're not in the business of giving away money. So if we can reduce that debt, obviously that's a very good thing.
Yeah. All right. So your budget, what is your total budget is 5,999,681. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So is that what we're going to approve today, or not, as the case may be? But I assume approve.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So the item was moved by, who moved this item?
Troy. And I moved it, Troy.
All right. So Troy has moved the item. Is there any further discussion in connection with it? All right. All in favor of approve? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I would just say that it would be very helpful next time or next year, whatever, to see the balance sheet with this, because it's that's very important here.
Well,
Yeah,
actually, there is a balance sheet on the other page. Actually, that's not up on the screen. I just turned to page, what would be page 31 in our packet. And there is a balance sheet.
Yeah.
And
That's an income statement, unless I'm
I would
missing
say
something.
that's an income statement. Yeah, you're
Not
right.
a balance sheet, it's just a detailed income.
Yeah.
statement.
All right. So yeah, so maybe they can present that at some point.
But we'll make sure we bring the fund balance to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the item, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. The motion carries, and the budget for the parking authority is approved. So thank you for your presentation, James.
Oh, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it.
Great. All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the fiscal year 2022-23 WPCA budget. You have someone on, Ralph, is it?
Yes,
All right.
it's Ralph Kolb. Hello, everyone. I'm Ralph Kolb. I'm the Senior Environmental Engineer for the Water Pollution Control Authority. Just like the Parking Authority, the WPCA is an enterprise fund. We have our own accounts, fund balance. We oversee the wastewater systems, including an 18 million gallon per day wastewater treatment plant, 22 sewage pump stations, and about 205 miles of collection system. Included in the board package, pages 35 through 38, is a memo to the BET board and our WPCA operating budget. A few highlights to call out on the budget. March 21st, the WPCA Board of Directors approved a 4% rate increase. In 2021, WPCA staff had a dynamic financial model developed as a planning tool for preparation of current and future capital and operating budgets. Suez, our contract operator, officially merged with Veolia on March 17th of this year. Together, the city and Veolia continue to make significant progress in many areas, and I have a few examples. In 2021, the Norwalk wastewater treatment plant achieved its second highest or all-time best nitrogen removal, which is measured in pounds per day in the history of the facility. In January of 2022, the WPCA board executed its first amendment to the contract. It provided that amendment included providing consent for the Suez Veolia merger. We also increased staff from 24 positions to 27 positions to put an emphasis on our collection system. So 3 additional members in collections. So in addition to the positions, we purchased a new jet and back truck. So that way we have 2 trucks out on the road every day and a camera truck. In addition, we had 7 additional smart covers purchased and will be deployed this year. We also have weather stations that we're going to add in the north and south of the city as part of the amendment through Veolia. Several key operating budget line items include on the revenue side, the rate increase of 4%, which is an increase for the flat fee of $15 per residential unit, $21 commercial flat rate, and 38 cents per 1,000 gallon increase for commercial consumption. That is consumption over 110,000 gallons per day. Per year. Norwalk is anticipated to receive about $100,000 in nitrogen credits from the state. The credit value has yet to be determined, but that's what we anticipate based on historical data. We also, the WPCA staff also provides services to the city of Norwalk. So we back charge the city for those services and collect a revenue on the WPCA side. And this year is the projected is about 143,000. On the expenditure side, our operation maintenance fee account increased due to amendment number 1 with Veolia and also inflation. We also have a line item that the city of Norwalk bills the WPCA for various services that the city performs for the WPCA, and that amount is about $670,000. Just like Parking Authority, we have debt service. Our payments are increasing due to bond funding of ongoing capital improvement projects. Does anybody have any questions or like detail on any specific items?
So your proposed budget is 18,616,000.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So is this is telling me the debt service, the principal is going up $1 million, almost $1 million?
That is correct.
Last summer, we borrowed 18.5 million for the WPCA based on their projected capital projects.
I'm sorry, what is it? What?
Last
You've got
summer-
that's
Last
in your
summer-
budget, right, Henry?
Well, again, I borrowed the money
Right,
But-
that's what I mean.
for their, so we borrowed $20 million last summer for the WPCA and the parking authority. 1.5 million was for the parking authority. 18.5 million were for the WPCA. Obviously, they have very heavy, substantial capital expenditures. So you borrow it over a certain term, and we have principal repayments of old debt as well as the new debt and interest as well.
Okay. And this is just for regular replacement of the equipment that you have there, Ralph?
So we have basically three pots or three asset categories: the wastewater treatment plant, which we continue to invest in; collection systems. We have 205 miles of pipe. Some of the pipes from the 1880s. It's there's just ongoing investment into those assets to ensure that the flow makes it to the treatment plant. And then we have pump stations. So what we've developed is we already have a capital improvement plan for pump stations over the next 15 years. And we continue to implement that in order to reduce risk. And when I say reduce risk of failure of those stations to cause either environmental or public impact. And right now we have one capital project that consists of 4 pump stations, and Kovacs construction is currently, that construction is ongoing with them. Collections, we do a lot of CIPP lining. Right now we're closing out a contract with Green Mountain Pipeline Services. They've been doing a lot of lining within the city, about $6 million worth over the last 2 years. And we're actually in design for a collection system project for Bell Island and the Samus Street sewer sheds. Again, it's to identify a lot of, it's actually a lot of the pipe down there is asbestos cement pipe. And what happens is with the tidal influence, the salt water has an impact on the concrete and basically turns it into a sponge, and that concrete ends up failing at some point, and all you're left with is the asbestos fibers. So being preventative by lining it will prolong the asset for 50 years plus. Plus, we don't have to excavate and impact the neighborhoods. Lining is minimal impact, where you can line substantial lengths per day in an 8-hour to 16-hour time frame, depending on the size of the pipe diameter. Pumps at the treatment plant, we have multiple phases that we're looking at to improve for the aeration system. Right now, we're doing a phase 1 electrical upgrade to move our infrastructure out of below decking and where it fills up with water. So it's going to be on a truss system. Once that project is done, we're going back in to replace aging MCCs from the 1970s and upgrade our blower system, which provides the air for the heart of the treatment plant, which is the basically the aeration process that does all the BOD, biochemical oxygen demand removal, breaks down the organic material, and also removes the ammonia from the wastewater and breaks it down into nitrogen gas. So that way we meet the nitrogen permit with the state. So we have WPCA, or the city, has large assets for wastewater treatment, and we're looking at the future to continue to improve. I forgot to mention, in collections, we're in the process of doing a master plan or updating our master plan. So that's going to provide us the next 10 to 20 years worth of projects that are recommended. And then also we just have a scope of work from our consultant for the treatment plant, and we're going to do what's called a facility plan update. And similar to collections and pump station, it's just a long-term plan of how to maintain assets over the long term. And then once that plan is finalized next year, we'll go into design of critical equipment and continue improving the facility.
Ralph, do you want to talk about the Woodard and Curran financial model that you've been utilizing?
Sure. Last year, I did mention earlier, we had our consultant, Woodard and Curran, create a dynamic financial model. And what it took was all the operating account information and all the future capital projects over the next 5 to 10 years and beyond. And it calculates the cash, the bonding, and the overall increase is in sewer use charges. So what we're trying to do is, and this is coming from the board of directors, is trying to smooth it out over the next 5 to 10 years, where instead of having big increases because of ongoing capital projects, we have a 4, maybe a 5% increase at most each year to fund all these projects. Benefit with the financial model, it helps staff and the finance department to plan for the future, not just for the coming fiscal year, but we're looking at 5 years ahead, 5 years out, which is a focal point. And then ultimately 10 years is in the model. But really we're concentrating in the future fiscal year and the 5 years out.
Thank you, Ralph. This is Troy. A couple of quick questions. What is the capacity right now? What are we operating at capacity? How close are we to capacity for the city right now?
Great question, Troy. So the treatment plant is able to handle 18 million gallons per day. I don't have the exact daily average, but we've been running around 12 million gallons per day. It fluctuates from year to year based on wet weather. Our permit, our NPDES permit with the state and EPA requires us, if we get to 90% of that 18 million gallons per day over a 180-day period, which equates to 16.2 million gallons per day, we have to put the state on notice how we're going to expand or reduce flow to the treatment plant. One of the benefits that we've been doing, because we're putting money into our infrastructure, we are removing a lot of infiltration. So by lining, you line the pipes. So not only is it a structural liner to prolong the asset 50 years or more, but you also, any joints or cracks in the pipe, you line over, and that keeps out groundwater or rainwater coming into the collection system. So last year, we actually did a presentation to the state that showed that in the last 5 years, like even though we have increased development in the city, by doing our capital improvement on the collection system, we've actually reduced the average daily flow to the facility.
Okay, and all new development obviously works closely with you guys or a P&Z, so that we're not in a situation, obviously, where you're way over capacity, right?
Absolutely. What we do with any development that comes in, we have Brown and Caldwell as our collection system consultant. We have a task order with them that they evaluate every development. We have guidelines, 5,000 gallons per day or more for a commercial or mixed use. And if it's 10 units or more for residential, we require flow monitoring. And that's flow monitoring of the receiving sanitary sewer main immediately downstream of the proposed development. And with that, we then also require a capacity analysis by their engineer. They provide that to staff, and we share that with our consultant, and we make sure that there is sufficient capacity. Our policy or guidelines is to have 25% spare available capacity, even with the additional flow from the future development.
And just one more thing, with the master plan you're developing, is there any thought of adding, like we live up in Cranberry and we do not have sewer lines up here. I don't know, long range planning, is it something that the city is looking to maybe add lines in areas that do not have sewer capabilities?
There is no plans at this time, and for that to be considered, that is a long-term, multi-department, citywide, I guess, conservation plan that the city would have to evaluate.
Yeah, we don't have that at Village Creek either, and I've been told that the cost is astronomical to retro to basically do it now. So we all have sewer septic as a result. Any other questions? All right. I'm not. Did anyone move this item? I don't recall.
So moved.
All right. So what? James Frere has moved it. We've had discussion on it. If there's no further discussion, we're prepared to vote. All right. All in favor of approving the fiscal year 2022-23 WPCA budget signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries and the budget's approved. Thank you, Rob. That was a great
Thank you,
presentation.
everyone.
Thank you, Ralph.
Have a great night.
Thank you, you too. Appointment of auditors for fiscal year 21-22.
So moved, Troy.
All right, Troy's moved it. Either Henry or Tom.
I'll take it.
Okay.
As was written in the memo, in 2020, we had an RFP for new auditing services, and we selected Bloom Shapiro. They've now merged with Clifton Larson Allen. That's their new name. In the RFP, it specified very small increases year by year. So we are asking for your approval for the audit of the time period, the year ending June 30, 2022, at a fee of $99,000. This is the third year of their 5-year contract.
Okay. So they have a 5-year contract, you said, and this is their third year?
The upcoming year will be their third year, yes.
Okay. Are there any questions about that?
My only question to Henry is, are you happy with the service that we're getting?
We're very pleased. They spent a lot of time in the first year getting up to speed, which is what has to be done and does not always get recovered by their fees. So they understand exactly what the challenges are, what the areas of concern are to make sure they apply the proper focus. The only challenge this year was as they merged with a larger national firm, some of the standards were a little bit different. And sometimes when you need approvals, instead of just getting a local partner from Bloom Shapiro, they had to go to headquarters. But those are minor, trivial. They're a quality firm. They've done great work. They've coordinated with Chitsme Lamb and her staff very well. And I think this year was one of the smoothest I've ever seen for an audit.
Great.
Good deal. Any other discussion on that item?
No.
I'm sorry, did someone move that?
Troy moved.
Jim did.
Okay.
Jim did, somebody.
All right, Jim moved the item. There's no further discussion. All in favor of approving the appointment of the auditors for fiscal year 21-22, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions. The motion carries and the item has been approved.
Thank you.
There's the Oak Hills matter. The Oak Hills, I guess, information. I unfortunately have to be somewhere at 7:45. Is there someone here from Oak Hills or?
Yeah, I see Joe.
Oh, is Joe on?
Yeah.
Joe, would you like to just to tell us briefly where we are with Oak Hills these days?
Sure. Just a quick update. Course was closed almost all of January and February. Not a lot of rounds. Reopened mid-March. So I think the January financials are in the packet. Not sure why February wasn't added, but just a preview of what you'll see when you see February, where we're 22 thousand over net income budget with about 250,000 cash on hand. Pretty good position to be in. Basically made it through the winter effectively. Restaurant also opened mid-March, I think on St. Patrick's Day for full public offering. So that's kind of a milestone that we've been looking forward to for a while. And on the matter of revenue rounds and non-revenue rounds, we discussed it briefly at our March meeting. But the general consensus from our authority members was just wanted more information, a little bit more discussion. So we'll bring it back on our April meeting to just kind of give information about what the concern is from the BET. And my proposed solution is going to be to retroactively to the beginning of this fiscal year, pay for all rounds that get played at Oak Hills, and to do that going forward. And, we want to have that discussion, out in the open, for public to comment and, just for generally for documentation of the decision, so that it's not lost to history as memories fade. So it'll be documented in minutes. It'll probably be on YouTube. So that's generally the update. I think those are the high points, but happy to take any questions.
In light of the time, can we talk next month about how you do the booking and how that's paid for?
I think Joe just said that that every round is going to be a revenue round. So all that to some extent becomes academic, right? Is that what you said? That all rounds will be revenue rounds?
There's two parts to this, and we'll talk about it next month. There's two parts. One is the revenue to the city, which is the $2.50 per round, which I think we all agree should be for all rounds. The second part is that there's a barter process in place that we give tee times to the booking agency that books all our tee times for us. When I say us, I'm talking about the golf course. And the way they get compensated is through the use of those rounds. They have those rounds to sell and they keep the revenue on those. We still haven't got a real good explanation. And I think, Joe, in defense of you haven't really got it. Well, the last couple of times we've talked about it, you and Palma had no clear idea how that process works. So rather than get into it, Ed doesn't have the time tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe we can discuss.
But I just want to make a point. That was relevant when those rounds were not considered revenue rounds. Whatever the rounds that the booking company sold and the rounds that, whatever those rounds were, they were not counted as a revenue rounds. They were considered a barter. At this point, I think Joe's proposal is that all rounds be revenue rounds. So how they want to compensate their booking company is really a matter of it's really up to them. As long as we get $2 or $2, whatever it is per round, and every round is a revenue round, then the mechanism of how they, whatever relationship they have with the booking company is really of no consequence to us.
I'm sorry, Ed, but I got to disagree with you there because it is. Because if they're giving rounds away,
but they're not, because as far as the city is concerned, every round we're being compensated $2.
How do you know?
So as far as the city,
I don't care about that. I care about the revenues that the golf authority brings in. They pay us on the total revenue every year. In addition to the $2.50, they have to pay us on all the revenue. Okay.
Right.
So what happens is if they've got some kind of a barter deal for the booking agency to book all of that's revenue that we're not collecting, we're not seeing, that the golf authority does not see. So, for example, if you've got non-revenue rounds of what, 7,500 a year? Okay, non-revenue rounds. So at an average price of $54, that starts to be pretty good money.
That's exactly correct. There's two
You're
components. Ed.
you're underestimating the revenue that the city is supposed to be paid on.
Yeah.
Is it
I know
really,
we're short,
is it
but
really,
Joe, go
is
back and
it-
talk to Paul, because I had a quick conversation with Paul about this, and he shed some light on it for me. I don't want to go into it now, but talk to him, please, so you can come back to us and tell us how many rounds you're bartering or giving to Golf Now and what you're getting in return for that, because it seems like every month is just another month we don't have an answer. So
is it really that much money that we're talking about?
Could be.
If we're being
Well, we don't know how many
compensated $2,
is it 20 rounds, 30 rounds? How many rounds you giving Golf Now a month?
Well, whatever it is, we're gonna get paid $2 a round, right? So you'll give us that number, we'll have that number. But,
That's one component of it.
right, and the other component is a percentage of the overall revenue, which I believe is what, 1%?
Mhm.
So the overall revenue is of that particular component. How much money could that possibly be?
Well, I don't know how much it is. I don't know how much, I don't know how much they're giving away.
There's another issue that's related to procurement, which says,
Well, I mean,
first of all, how much is it costing us for this booking platform? No one can answer that. How much
Yeah.
is it costing us? And then number two, was there a formal RFP? And how did these people get decided, selected? And how was this compensation system established? And I think there's a real issue if we have one provider, we don't even know how much they're getting compensated, and we don't know how it affects the whole operation.
So my request would be if we could document these questions in advance of the next meeting, and we can come with a punch list of responses,
okay,
please.
we'll do that. All right, so we'll have that for next discussion. But in the meantime, you're going to propose to the Appeals Authority Board that all rounds be considered revenue rounds and that the city is compensated per round, regardless of whether it's a barter round or something else. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
All
You
right.
might want to, Joe, you might want to check that, because I think the high school we give like rounds to, we're not charging. I don't know. There are some areas I think we're giving, right? Not going to take that from, but if you're saying all rounds, that's great.
I don't particularly see the importance of splitting those hairs at this point.
Well, listen, all rounds sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So we'll get a punch list to you, Joe, and we'll hopefully put this to bed next time around. In the meantime, are there any other questions? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, Ed and Artie, the meeting is adjourned, and we'll pick up at our next regular meeting, unless there's a special meeting between now and then, although I guess we have that May 2nd vote the vote before May 2nd that we have to get together on. So thank you all.
Thanks,
And
Ed.
I'll get in touch with you, Ed, about what the questions that we want to give to the Golf Authority.
Yeah, do you want to just email those to, just everyone email their questions to me. I'll put them all in one email and I'll send them to Joe, CC everyone else. How's that?
Great.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
good deal.
Thanks, Ed.
You.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, everybody.